All right, everybody. This is going to be a quick lecture about the ISTE standards for EIPT 5513. So, what is ISTE? ISTE stands for the International Society for Technology and Education. They write technology standards used throughout the world, but used in almost every state in the U.S. It has an annual conference where 20,000 educators work together to learn about technology and education. This year's is in Anaheim. So, what are standards? So, I know some of the people in this class have gone to U.S. schools. Some people are already teachers. Some people don't know much about the U.S. education system. But in general, states adopt standards to give a guideline for teachers on how they should develop their curriculum. Standards are meant to be kind of big ideas around where learning activities can be planned. They actually were never meant to be tested on the factual level. And so when we look at like content standards, this is one of the ways that we've gone wrong. Like there's a content standard, I think, for fourth grade that about students understanding planetary motion. And a test question for that is name the 8 planets. And that really wasn't their intent, because that doesn't show you anything about the solar system. But so generally, when we're talking about standards, they usually have like a big idea, main standard, and then some examples of activities that meet them. So we're going to start by going to the ISTE standards. And so you're going to click on ISTE.org/standards, and this loads the ISTE page for standards. And what I want to show you is that they have a series of standards, those made for students, those made for educators, those made for leaders, and those made for coaches, and then also computer science competencies for regular educators and for computer science educators. Now, if you look at any one of these, and we click at the students, for example, you'll see they're broken down into these large categories: empowered learner, digital citizen, knowledge constructor, innovative designer, computational thinker, creative communicator, and global collaborator. Then if you click on any one of these, like creative communicator, it'll say that students can choose appropriate platforms to communicate. They can create original work. They can communicate complex ideas using technology or digital objects, and that they publish and present content to customize the message. So those are all kind of suggestions, but that all falls under creative communicator. And so creative communicator, although it doesn't mention it, could be making movies, doing a podcast, recording an explanation. These are all things that creative communicator could be doing. And so it's really meant as like a broad idea that different activities could fit under. So let's go back to the presentation here. There's a YouTube video where they talk about the student standards, but think about how you might use them in a lesson. The technology standards are always really secondary to content. When we're teaching students, we always need to be focused. In the United States, teachers don't have a lot of time to teach content. And so if you want students to use technology, then you need to figure out a way to pick a content area or some sort of a content topic like math or science or language arts, and then use technology as the vehicle to teach them. But using the technology standards is a way in which making sure that you hit on the major kinds of things that students need to learn to be ready for the technical world. So this course is based on the ISTE standards for educators. So you can go back and look at the ISTE standards for educators. Just so you know, they were approved in 2017. Oklahoma immediately adopted them. They're used by districts to design professional development. And it's broken down into 2 groups: empowered professional and learning catalyst. And so if we look at these, and I want you to look at them in more detail, because I want you to be using either the student standards, the educator standards, or the leader standards in talking about your book a little bit, that when you're going to talk in our first class. But when we think about an empowered professional, a teacher is always trying to learn and improve their learning. They're a leader. They seek out opportunities to help other teachers and to support students. They're a good citizen. They're modeling good behaviors. I think about my undergraduate students who talk about their teachers who spent the whole day on email or on a chat app instead of paying attention to the students. That's not being a good digital citizen. Then we also have learning catalyst. A learning catalyst is somebody who is a collaborator, and so they work with others and they share resources. And so when we think about a really effective technology using teacher, today on Twitter, there was a teacher that shared some materials that she made through Google Drive, which are exactly what I've been looking for my undergraduate course. And so there, she's a collaborator. She shared that with me, and I'll probably share some ideas back with her. And then finally, that an effective teacher is going to design learning activities and environments that help to accommodate different learners. Technology is probably the most exciting way in which we can accommodate all learners, because kids are walking around with headphones all the time. In fact, I had a meeting with a student last week. She had her headphones in through the whole thing. Wasn't sure if she was listening to music or while she was talking to me or not. But the idea is, I don't know what she's doing. She could be listening to music. She could be having the book read to her. She could be using a visualization software, all those things to help her learn. And so then as a learning catalyst, you also have a teacher as a facilitator. They help to facilitate learning and also support students. And this is really important because it's not about the teacher being the center, but maybe creating projects and opportunities for students to show their learning. And then finally, probably the one that affects people the most is that technology allows a teacher to really look at how students are learning and use data. More and more, and a lot of you chose books about this, we're seeing that technology is about those data analytics. So, why are they important to you as a teacher? If you're constantly learning, they can improve your professional practice, and it can also be a guide to make sure that what you're learning is spread appropriately across different kinds of skills. We often find this, that we often will do things that are easier for us. So, for example, if I'm really comfortable with making movies, I could just keep on learning how to make movies. But if I'm less comfortable with planning global activities, if I'm looking at all the standards, then I can plan those activities more appropriately. And so throughout this class, I'm going to ask you to talk about the ISTE standards with your work. And this is just so you can start to kind of delve into them and use them regularly and make yourself more aware of them. So if you go and you look at the other ISTE standards, I mentioned these already. You can go back to the website and you'll see that there's ISTE standards for leaders and coaches and computer science education. I've included them in the Canvas course so that you can download them if you'd like to do that. But you can also get them from the website. I was actually on the leader committee, and the one thing that I want to stress about the ISTE standards is they spent over a year writing them. We had 12 key people that helped to shape them, but the organization had listening sessions, contributions from around the world. And so these are really written by teachers for teachers. And so as you look at them, think about how a school might really be transformed if all the standards were adopted, all the way from student to leaders. And so as you're doing projects in this class, I'd like you to look at these standards. Either teacher or leader are probably the most appropriate for people in our course. And so when you sit and reflect on different activities that we do, think about those standards as you're working. Thank you for your attention.